Welcome to literary and jury charge practice. Let's start out with some jury charge, and the subject of this jury charge is weighing evidence. Ready? Here we go. Members of the jury, you are the sole judges of the truthfulness of the witnesses and of the weight that is to be given to their testimony. It is not your duty to accept the testimony of witnesses blindly and follow it passively, but it is your duty to consider it with care, subject it to your experience and judgment, and accept it only so far as it appeals to you as being reasonable and true. While it is your duty to accept as true the uncontradicted testimony of an unimpeached witness given with apparent fairness and candor, still you are not obliged to accept the testimony of a witness as true merely because there is no testimony contradicting it. If it contains contradictions or improbabilities which, standing alone or in connection with other evidence in the case, furnish reasonable grounds for believing that it is not true, you are at liberty to so regard it. If you find and believe from the evidence that any witness has willfully or knowingly testified falsely with respect to any material matter in the case, you are then at liberty to disregard the testimony of such witness with regard to other matters, excepting insofar as such witness is corroborated by other credible testimony. But you are the sole judges of the truthfulness of such a witness as well as any other, and you may believe or disbelieve his testimony with respect to other matters accordingly as you deem it worthy or unworthy of belief. You may take into consideration the interest of the witnesses in the results of the action, their appearance upon the witness stand, their demeanor in the courtroom, their relation to the parties, if any, and all the facts and circumstances in connection with the trial, and give to the testimony of each witness just such weight and credibility as you think it deserves. You are not to count the number of witnesses and render your verdict in accordance with the majority of them, but to weigh the testimony and render your verdict in accordance with the truth. It is the law that during the first 12 hours of your deliberations you can only render a verdict by unanimously agreeing upon the verdict. However, if you fail to agree during the first 12 hours, the law permits you after that to render a verdict that has been agreed upon by 5/6 of your number. In case you render a unanimous verdict, it should be signed by your foreman as such, but if you render a 5/6 verdict, it should be signed only by those concurring in the verdict and not by your foreman unless he be one concurring, in which case he will sign the same as the rest and not as foreman. You will select one of your number as foreman when you retire to the jury room, and when you have agreed upon the verdict, bring it into court if the court is in session. If the court is not in session, seal up your verdict, give it to your foreman, and bring it in when court next convenes. If you agree upon a verdict when court is in session, you will not seal it up. Now we'll try some literary material. And this is one we had started called Crack the Code to Pass the Test. All right, ready? Here we go. Body, toes, and fingertips code tips. Wear comfortable shoes and footwear. This awareness tip should be incorporated into your daily routine, especially when prepping for a test. If you are taking a machine portion of any test, your fingertips, nails must function at peak performance. Many students and reporters have manicures. Now is not the time to get a new length or style. Use what works best for you. Radar code tips. As you move closer to your scheduled test, you should specifically notice your energy awareness. Code cracking includes becoming aware that you may now be more sensitive at work and school, with family and yourself. Some term this as cranky, but I prefer sensitive, which is normal. Once you are aware that this energy is part of your preparation, you can acknowledge it and let these test prep code tips work for you. I know you can learn a lot about yourself as you hone and fine-tune your radar, your sensitivity meter. Inspiration code tips. Take time for you. When was the last time you listened to a favorite CD? Is there a movie that inspires you? Have you laughed recently? When we focus on a long-term goal, I firmly believe that it is the little moments, note it's plural, in our world wherein we most effectively gain momentum toward our goal. Common sense code tips. Pack equipment and you before the test. Avoid gassing the car en route. Make sure that there is no construction near the site. You should be packed by mid-afternoon the day before, which reduces the questions like, where did I? Oxygen code tips. Stretch and breathe. When stressed, we sit with our shoulders hunched up and breathe shallowly. Consciously focus on a steady rhythm of evenly breathing in and breathing out to maximize your body's ability to work for you. Focus on regulating your breath. If your voice is higher than normal, you are breathing shallowly. Become aware of your health. Your body will respond with a good-sized release of stressed energy. Note that the more oxygen your brain receives, the better you function. Nest code tips. Sleep. Focus on your resting routine. The final 2 nights before the test, I suggest taking a warm bath or shower, curling up with another human, a pet, or a book, and being quiet. In your quiet moments and rituals, you will find great focus and comfort. This quiet time is how you recharge. Toxic decoding code tips. Avoid high-maintenance people. We all know people who have toxic moments. If someone has multiple toxic moments, focus on removing your energy. You want to be comforted and to remain focused. When there are multiple pulls or drains on your energy, your internal compass will recognize the problem. Please remember that you earned the right to a peaceful, focused preparation towards your goal. Real-time focus code tips. On the morning of your test, consciously monitor fluids. Caffeine gives you an energy burst and then drops you when it bursts. I coach that each person should pack red grapes and a packet of non-salted pretzels or nuts. There is an amazing abundance of energy in these snacks. The last time I went to the movies, my mother whispered, "Want some?" In her hands, she held a small bag of red grapes and 2 paper towels. She then said, "They are so good and quiet too." I softly groaned and looked to my right where my dad sat. He shrugged his shoulders and slowly shook his head as my mother handed me red grapes in a paper towel. She added, "And I washed them." Red grapes are portable and good for you at the movies or at a test site. Yes, I know, food is not allowed, but you can snack at appropriate times. Entrance code tips. When you enter the test site, consciously arrive with your shoulders back and chin up. And if this is a return walk, focus on the now. If this is your virgin stroll, a click of your fingers or a sacred moment in prayer may help you to focus. Now is where you need to be. People red alert code tips. Avoid huddled groups and agitated chatting. Specifically, avoid anyone who asks, "What does this mean? How do you write? How many times did it take you to?" Now is your time. You need to consciously remain focused on your code and your test prep awareness. When you consciously perform at your peak and focus on your success with step-by-step awareness, you can achieve greater results with less effort and stress. Your internal compass will guide you. This month I shared tips to add 4 deliberate conscious thoughts and additions or actions. Next month I will share tips on what to eliminate with part 2 of cracking the code. We'll get back to some jury charge practice now. And The subject of this jury charge is assault and battery. Here we go. Where an unlawful trespass is being committed upon the property of another, the owner may lawfully use the amount of force which is necessary under the circumstances for the protection of his property, either real or personal. However, he will be guilty of assault if he uses excessive force or any force after the necessity therefore is past. To justify a resort to force in defense of property, the danger should be such as to induce one exercising reasonable and proper judgment to interfere to prevent the consummation of the injury, throwing a stone which is capable of inflicting grievous bodily harm at a person, even though such person is a trespasser, constitutes an assault if the purpose was to commit grievous bodily harm. Ordinarily, one who is in possession of premises lawfully and who has requested or ordered another to leave, whom he has a right to so request, may lawfully use as much force as is necessary to remove such other after allowing him a reasonable time to depart, and the trespasser may not resist if only reasonable force and agencies are used or employed in making such rejection. This right applies to any property lawfully in possession. However, anyone ejecting a trespasser will be guilty of assault if he uses more force than is necessary, as when he uses a dangerous or deadly weapon, unless the trespass is made with hostile intent and actual force. The general rule is that the owner may use only such force as is necessary to eject the trespasser. A man may not use a deadly weapon to resist a mere trespass, but he may resist the trespass with sufficient force. If while so resisting he has reasonable ground for believing that he himself is in personal danger, then he may use a weapon to defend himself and his property. It is clear that a man has no right to commit an assault with intent to do great bodily harm to another for a wrong that he does not have reasonable ground to believe to be dangerous to himself. If a person honestly believes or has reason to believe that he is in great peril and that great bodily harm is about to be inflicted upon him, he has a right to act under such well-grounded apprehension and may use a weapon even though the danger does not in fact exist. However, in the absence of a felonious invasion of one's property, that is, in the absence of an invasion with intent to commit the crime of felony thereon, one does not have the right to inflict serious bodily injury in the defense of property interests alone. The defendant in this case, after requesting the plaintiff to leave the premises, had the right to use reasonable force to eject him, but no more force than was reasonably necessary. If, in protecting his land from trespass only, he intentionally inflicted grievous bodily harm upon the plaintiff and was not himself in reasonable fear of danger or bodily harm to himself, then he committed a wrongful assault upon the plaintiff. Let's try another jury charge. The subject of this jury charge is murder. Ready? Here we go. There is no duty upon the court to comment upon the evidence at all. All the court has to do is render a verdict of guilty or not guilty, where people waive a jury and submit the matter to the court. I usually give to counsel and those people interested in the case the court's reasoning how the evidence appears to the court. As I say, I am not going to attempt to comment on all the evidence. There is no duty on the court to comment on it at all. Suffice it to say that if this defendant's story is to be believed, he is not guilty of murder or even manslaughter. If his story is to be believed, he did not even cut the man. The man stabbed himself or got cut in the scuffle if he is to be believed. I do not mind saying to you that it is hard to believe his story. His story is quite unbelievable. It does not ring true that this man can go into a tavern 2 or 3 times and there be no objection by reason of his nationality, but on this particular occasion, the last time, the deceased comes up to him and calls him a vile name and starts to struggle with him with a knife. Now, counsel, things just do not happen that way. If that was all the evidence in the case, why, I would have to find the defendant not guilty. But I cannot believe his story. Now, on behalf of the state, one witness, the girl in the case, Rosemary, was not very helpful, but it does appear that this defendant lived with this girl for over a year, and that only a week or 2 previously she had left him. All right. So he contacts her there in this tavern, according to her story. And according to her story, the defendant wanted to buy her a drink and she refused. So indefinite though her testimony was, it does show that there was some friction between the defendant and this Rosemary. Now, on behalf of the other witness for the state, Mrs. Carter, she told a very clear and convincing story which jibes with all the facts in the case. She said that this defendant came there early in the afternoon and was quarreling and having trouble with Rosemary. The deceased tried to get him to stop and finally put him out of the place sometime during the afternoon. Later, the defendant came back after having the trouble in the afternoon and again had some contact with the girl Rosemary. When the deceased tried to put him to sit down at a table and behave himself or leave, he pulled out a knife. It appears very much to the court as if this defendant knew that he was going to have trouble there. He came back looking for trouble. In any event, if the fight started as he says it started, he certainly used more force than was necessary to defend himself. I will have to find this defendant guilty. I do not believe his story at all. I think the state has proved beyond all reasonable doubt that this defendant stabbed the deceased and brought about his death. The defendant says he did not mean to kill him. He did not mean to kill him, but he did mean to do him severe bodily harm, and death resulted from the injuries received by the deceased from the defendant. I will find the defendant guilty of manslaughter and sentence him to 10 years in the penitentiary. Reverend, I wish you would go out with him and explain to him. Just go out with him and explain to him what I said. I want him to understand. All right, we'll get back to some literary practice. This is called Finding Motivation. Ready? Here we go. This fall, I went hiking with my sister in the Daniel Boone National Forest located in Kentucky. We planned ahead and mapped out the trails we wanted to take to reach Gray's Arch, one of the most spectacular arches in the Red River Gorge area. After hiking 4 miles over somewhat difficult trails and not finding the arch, we returned to the car to eat lunch. At that point, we saw another trail that indicated the arch was 12 miles ahead. My sense of motivation kicked in. Yes, we were tired, it was hot, and we were somewhat skeptical because the other mapped trails had not gotten us where we wanted to go, but there was no way I was going back to Pennsylvania without seeing Gray's Arch. Grit and determination took over and motivated us to hike a few more miles to accomplish our mission. Sometimes grit and determination are wonderful motivators, but more often than not, it takes a planned approach to accomplish what is truly important to us. It takes a plan that will help us through the rough patches when our initial motivation wanes. It is important to note here that how to be motivated requires a strong sense of purpose, knowing what excites you, and that you establish personal high standards. However, with that understanding, let's talk about that action plan. First, what is it that you really want? Do you want to grow your business, become proficient at real time, obtain a higher certification, achieve a work-life balance? Be honest with yourself and choose something that is important to you at this time in your life. Second, consider the obstacles that are getting in your way. Fear of new things, perfectionism, lack of resources, not knowing how to get started, wasting time. Do any of these sound familiar? Take heart that your plan is going to address those obstacles. Third, take one of your priorities and identify specific obstacles. Chances are it is the bad habits you've been engaging in that have left you in a rut. I don't write clean enough to provide real time. I really don't need another certification. I don't have the financial resources to market my business. Next, change that habit. A habit has 3 elements: a trigger, a daily routine, and a reward. If you wanted to write real time, but your daily routine is to complain about your skill level, or that there's no demand in your area, or you don't have time to practice, or you don't know your CAT software, how your CAT software can help. Can you guess what your reward will be? Exactly, nothing changes. You do not become proficient at real time, which can increase your productivity or can increase your income level. Did you know that among those who were surveyed concerning income, 53% of the CRRs earn more than $100,000, while only 30% of RPRs and merely 7% of those with no certifications earned over $100,000? Talk about motivation. How do you change that outcome? The secret is the second element, making your daily routine something positive. What are some things that you can do to increase your real-time skill level? Can you find 15 minutes a day to practice? How about learning how your CAT software improves your writing? If you show your clients the benefits of streaming real-time to them, can you then have a new revenue stream? The value of changing that negative daily routine to one that is positive can make a big difference in your professional life. The beauty of this action plan is that you can apply it to so many different goals you want to achieve. Just remember to change the daily routine to something positive rather than a negative. It works. Additionally, there are specific ways that successful people stay motivated. Choose which of these work for you in implementing that action plan. Understand your why. Stay focused on the big picture. Get active, have an accountability buddy, create small bite-sized goals, have fun, write down your ideas, visualize the future. By the way, I'm so glad my sister and I stayed motivated and made it to Gray's Arch. It was truly spectacular and worth every step of those 6 miles we hiked. And that will conclude our literary and jury charge practice.